They called it a holy war, a march to reclaim the sacred city of Christ. But behind the banners and the crosses lurked merchants, and behind the prayers lurked betrayal. This is not the story of salvation. This is the story of how gold, greed, and guile shattered Christendom itself. This is the Venetian plot, and it changed the course of the Crusades forever. At the dawn of the 13th century, Christendom was fractured. The Holy Land was still in the hands of the Muslims. Jerusalem, the heart of Christian devotion, had fallen more than a century earlier. The Crusades had begun with fiery zeal, but one by one, they had failed. The First Crusade had captured Jerusalem in 1099, bathing the city in blood. But by 1187, it was lost again, this time to the legendary Muslim general Saladin. And so, a Fourth Crusade was proclaimed. Pope Innocent III, a young, ambitious pontiff, saw it as a divine opportunity to restore Christian power. He called upon the kings and knights of Europe to march once more under the sign of the cross. But unlike the previous Crusades, this one would not go through the familiar routes. There would be no long march across Anatolia, no treacherous mountain passes or brutal sieges in the Levant. This time, the Crusaders would go by sea, and for that they needed ships, lots of them. They turned to the greatest naval power of the age, Venice. Venice, a city unlike any other, built on water, governed by merchants, and ruled not by popes or kings, but by profit. The Doge of Venice, Enrico Dandolo, was nearly blind and well into his 90s. But do not mistake his age for weakness. Dandolo was a cunning politician, a master of manipulation, a man who had outlived emperors and outmaneuvered kings. When the Crusaders approached him for a fleet, Dandolo agreed. But he set the price high, very high. The Crusaders were to pay 85,000 silver marks, a sum so immense that even the combined wealth of the nobility could not cover it. Yet they agreed, signing the contract in 1201, believing they could raise the funds. But when the time came, they couldn't. Only a fraction of the agreed sum was collected. And this is where the plot begins. Dandolo, instead of canceling the deal, made them an offer. He would forgive the debt if the Crusaders did one small favor for Venice. A city on the Dalmatian coast, Zara, had defied Venetian authority. If the Crusaders helped Venice capture it, the debt would be forgiven. But there was a problem. Zara was a Christian city, and attacking it meant Christians killing Christians. Many knights objected. Some left the crusade altogether. But the debt was too great, the pressure too high, and the fleet had already sailed. In 1202, the Crusaders, under the banner of the cross, besieged and sacked Zara. Christian blood ran in the streets. Churches were looted. Families torn apart. It was the first betrayal, and it would not be the last. Pope Innocent III, furious, excommunicated the entire army. But the Crusaders kept going. They were now under Venice's influence, and Venice had bigger plans. Dandolo's gaze turned east, to Constantinople. Constantinople, the jewel of the Eastern Roman Empire, the greatest city in Christendom, a city of wealth, of relics, of unimaginable splendor. For centuries, the Byzantine Empire had stood as the guardian between Europe and the Muslim world. But now it was weak, divided, ruled by a corrupt emperor and plagued by internal strife. And it just so happened that a young Byzantine prince, Alexios Angelos, had fled to the Crusaders, offering them a new bargain. If they would help him reclaim his throne from his usurper uncle, he would reward them handsomely. Money, provisions, and, most tempting of all, he would reunite the Eastern Church with Rome. The Crusaders hesitated. This was not the Holy Land. This was not Jerusalem. But again, debt and desperation won. They sailed for Constantinople. In 1203, the Crusaders arrived outside the massive walls of the Byzantine capital. They attacked. The city, stunned by betrayal from fellow Christians, fell quickly. Alexios IV was placed on the throne beside his blind father, and for a brief moment it seemed the plan had worked. But Constantinople was not a city to be tamed. The people hated Alexios. They hated the Latin Crusaders even more. Riots erupted. Fires broke out. The treasury was empty. And when Alexios couldn't pay the money he had promised, the fragile alliance collapsed. In January 1204, Alexios was overthrown and murdered. A new emperor rose, Alexios V. He rejected the Crusaders, refused to pay them, ordered them to leave, but they didn't. Now furious, betrayed, and hungry, the Crusaders and the Venetians decided they would take the city for themselves. On April 12, 1204, they launched their final assault. What followed was not a battle. It was a catastrophe. Constantinople was looted, burned, and desecrated. Churches were ransacked, sacred relics stolen, women raped, children slaughtered. The great library was destroyed, ancient knowledge lost forever. Statues that had stood since the days of Rome were melted down for coin. The Crusaders declared victory, but it was hollow. They had not reclaimed Jerusalem. They had not saved Christendom. They had destroyed its greatest city. And who profited the most? Venice. Venetian ships carried home stolen relics. Gold, ivory, silk, manuscripts, priceless treasures. Even the 4 bronze horses from the Hippodrome were shipped back to adorn the facade of St. Mark's Basilica, where they remain to this day. Venice emerged richer than ever. Christendom was shattered. The Eastern and Western churches, already divided by doctrine, were now divided by blood. The Byzantines never forgave the West, and the empire, once mighty, never truly recovered. Within 2 centuries, Constantinople would fall to the Ottomans, and the last light of Rome would be extinguished, all because of a plot, a deal, a betrayal. The Fourth Crusade was never about faith. It was about profit. And behind the facade of holy war, Venice pulled the strings. The legacy of the Crusades is stained not just by war, but by this calculated act of treachery. The story we are told is one of knights and glory, but the truth is far more disturbing. The very people who vowed to defend Christianity helped destroy it. Ask yourself, how many wars have been fought in the name of faith, but fueled by greed? How many crusades have been launched with holy words, but guided by merchants? The banners may have carried the cross, but the coin bore the Lion of Venice. And perhaps the most terrifying truth of all is that this was not an accident. It was the plan all along. The Venetian plot did not just shatter Christendom. It revealed it for what it truly was, a game of power, played in the shadows, with cities, empires, and souls as the pieces. Welcome to the forgotten truth. Welcome to CIHUYS.